welcome to Tea Time with Talent Acquisition, the podcast aimed at fostering knowledge and sharing stories within the vibrant talent acquisition community. I'm your host, Eden, and for the next hour or so, I'm going to be joined by an accomplished HR professional who has gained experience working with emerging employers and national companies in human resources operations. After a very successful career in the corporate world, he shifted his focus towards the dynamic startup scene, sharpening his skills into the talent acquisition field. With a deep passion for exceptional candidate experience across all levels, the conversation today will focus not only on crafting processes that's going to yield better results for those that we support, but hopefully allow us to work at a higher level when we come to talent acquisition that's going to help elevate our own careers regardless of where we end up. So when you're ready, grab your favorite tea or coffee if you prefer, and join me in welcoming today's guest, the Senior Talent Acquisition Specialist with the team at Konux, Victor Emmanuel. So thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for inviting me, Aiden. It is a great opportunity for me to be here.
I appreciate it. And I'm going to have to put the elephant in the room first of all, or throw the elephant in the room. This is, I think, the fourth or fifth time you and I have tried to record. There are some things out of my control, out of your control. I've had some illnesses. So this was meant to go into season 4, but you're now in season 8. So it's almost half the time the podcast has been around. We've been trying to get our diaries to align. So I really do appreciate you sticking around. And the topic has changed from then to now. So I'm obviously very excited to talk about what we're going to talk about. But before we do it, one of the questions that everyone gets is, what makes a high-performing talent acquisition team to you, Victor?
High-performing talent acquisition. For me, I would say it's not only with one person, it's include a team. For example, I would say the recruiter, the hiring manager, and the interview panels. So everyone has to participate, and everyone has to follow the structure of the hiring process. Okay. And the most important thing is everyone has to play an important role in the evaluation. Okay. So that's the most important thing, I would say, in terms of high performing talent acquisition.
You've already segued into the conversation without me even asking. So evaluation process and creating an evaluation structure is what you want to share. So what does that actually mean? When you say evaluation process, right? What do you actually mean because it was the first, I think it was the first time that you shared it to me, it was like a different terminology to me. So for anyone who's sitting there going, what the hell is this? Layman's terms, what do you mean exactly?
See, evaluation process is something that we need to set up internally. Every organization is unique. Okay. The hiring process or the structures are going to be remains the same. But what is more important is the evaluation process. You need to understand the company culture. Okay, that's the second thing. But the most first thing is you need to understand what is the requirement, okay, of that particular role, and how you collaborate, okay, and how you bring out a structured evaluation process. This is very, very important. I have been working with the corporate world and also in the startup companies and scale-up companies. But wherever I worked, I see our evaluation process changes. It is a must that we need to change the evaluation process. Okay, as I mentioned, you depend upon the role or depend upon the requirement and also about the culture. We need to set up the evaluation process. By these, what we can do, we can bring a hiring process, ensure that candidates are accessed fairly, consistently, and aligned with the expectation of the role and the company culture.
So the ultimate reason is just jump into there. Sorry, so it's actually understanding. Okay, at its core, what are we actually looking at? Not just the nice to haves, the wish list, but what are we actually looking at? And then let's evaluate everybody based on that exact criteria in every process to allow for a fair, consistent process.
I would say, just an example, there are most of the time when we start hiring a role, okay, what happens is the recruiter and the hiring manager is the collaboration start with that one. Rather, for a small change, what I was thinking, in a couple of months before, why can't we have a debriefing session or a briefing session? Sorry, that's not a debriefing, it's a briefing session that we can have along with the other internal panels also. Why we need to have this one, which means the hiring manager is going to tell his requirements, not only for me, he is also going to tell the interview panels, which means everyone is going to be on the same line. They will understand what they have to do. Okay, again, going back to an example, list down the critical focus areas. The hiring managers will, because I have the job description, okay, but besides that, now the hiring manager is coming up with a different requirement. So he has to list down the critical focusing areas, the skills, and the competencies. Okay, if it is a new role or if it's a backfilling of someone, okay, obviously there will be a kind of changes in the requirement. So list down the critical focusing areas, skills and competencies, and then what need to be evaluated in each phase of the interview. As a recruiter,
Okay.
what I'm going to interview. As a hiring manager, what he is going to interview. As a technical group interview, what the interview panels are going to ask. So you need to discuss this one, list down, and add it in the application tracking system. That's my
I
first
mean,
idea.
why? I mean, it's always my question to anyone. Anytime anyone wants to talk about anything, what is the actual importance behind doing this to you as a talent acquisition professional? For our
Mhm,
careers,
mhm.
why would I bother trying to do it like this and not just go with the flow of what the company's already done?
See, the most important thing is to mitigate bias in the hiring process. Okay, we always come up with an evaluation process here. Okay, as I mentioned you before, assessed fairly consistently the candidates. Okay, so the candidate experience is also very, very important here. Okay, at any time, for example, if you reject a candidate, the candidate will be coming back and asking for a feedback.
Mm.
Okay, that's important. The second thing is avoiding these bias. Are we coming up with a very good structure evaluation? That is more important. Okay, so sometimes we all are human beings. Okay, when we get into the interview, okay, sometimes a candidate talk in a very friendly manner, okay, and he has all the potential skills and the body language, everything. So we just go into the flow and we might kind of skipping some of the questions, okay, and maybe this can happen in the all levels of the interviews. Maybe this has happened in the recruiter screen or in the hiring manager process or in the tech group interview. So at last we hire someone, okay, and then later we have a challenge with the candidate. That's one example. The other example, I would say, when we don't ask a follow-up question, and sometimes there are some candidates, okay, have a lot of good experience. Okay, when we ask question, they give an answer in one word, and then where we fail to ask some follow-up questions and we come to an assumption saying that, oh, this candidate is not good. So
Yeah.
when we come up with a structured focusing area, okay, we drive the candidate, okay, and ask questions and take all the necessary information which is required for that particular phase of the interview.
Who should drive this, right? So say one of your hiring managers gives you a requirement. Are you going to them and say, okay, this is what we should be doing, sitting down, getting all the panel together, what Mr. or Mrs. Klein or whoever, what are
Mhm,
your mandatories, must-haves, evaluation criterias, and then you're listing them down, or
mhm.
do they drive it back to you?
No. As I mentioned you before, like the requirements, okay, basically the hiring manager is going to give the situation, okay,
Hmm.
why these requirements are needed, okay, what is the current situation which is happening in the team, okay.
Yeah.
For example, take it in a case of a lead client delivery manager, okay,
Okay.
and he is telling like, okay, so this is the role which I'm going to open, and then this role, this particular person need to be 50% focusing on the people management and 50% on the hands-on. Yeah. So now the recruiter and the tech group interview panels, they can always ask this question, why it is. Okay, so we need to understand why these two criterias or the requirements are more important for this role, how it is going to help. Okay, so we ask this question and we list it down, um, um, the areas, okay, where the technical group interview, where the technical interview panels are going to ask what kind of questions. For example, going back, someone can ask, the technical interview panels can ask the questions about how he is, the quality side, how is what are the areas of focusing, like quality and stakeholder relationship, okay, and customer success. All these things comes into the, so, and then as a recruiter, I will be checking in some of the areas where needs to be primary information is needed, preliminary information. For example, like I don't do a deep dive, rather I will understand a bit of overview of these areas, and then the hiring manager go a little bit deep dive, okay,
Mhm.
and he will understand. So in this way, we share our responsibilities on the focusing area. We evaluate the candidate on the each phase of the interviews, and we make sure like he or she has been evaluated thoroughly.
So a hiring manager comes to you, here's a position, everyone collectively sits down. These are the areas that I'm going to be, or we want to evaluate collectively as a team. And are we looking at a macro level of skills? Because again, I take 50% hands-on, 50% technical, right? And then within, say, technical, you're drilling it down to say, okay, we want this, 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 and this. Or you
Yes.
just say, okay, cool. So we're going to the micro level then. So then you're saying, okay, Victor, you're taking your responsibility is this group of areas that you're evaluating. Technical team, you're evaluating these areas. And then me as a hiring manager, I'm evaluating these areas. So you outline that before the job search even begins. Any job has been posted, you know, from day dot, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, we're evaluating these. And a collective, if the person gets to the end of the process, we would have covered, argument's sake, say 9 things that you're evaluating, right?
Yeah, you are absolutely right. As I'm, let it make it once again the clear, like as you said. So the recruiter will have certain areas to focus. Okay, these are also the reflecting on the critical areas, and then the I do the overview, understanding whether this person have the skills and experience. Okay, and then I will give it to the hiring manager, and the hiring manager will go deep dive on certain more areas. And then when
Mhm.
it goes to the technical group interview, they will be asking more on the technical sides. Okay, and then asking for scenarios, an example, or some kind of a design test and everything. So it, which means our evaluation process is going very thoroughly.
So say you're evaluating, I don't know, say a soft skill, communication, to keep it nice and easy, right? So you're evaluating communication. This is actually a really bad example. I've realized now I've said the word communication. We'll stick with it. Then the tech team have realized you haven't evaluated communication based on the feedback that you've provided on the ATS system.
Mhm.
Are they then trained or willing to pick that requirement up to say, okay, you haven't covered it for whatever reason, we're going to cover it as well as ours in ours to ensure the whole process, everyone covers everything. So also what I'm thinking is you might get to the end of the process where candidate 1 had been evaluated on everything, candidate 2 maybe on 90% of it because time escaped you on an interview. You just didn't have the time to do it. How does those scenarios work?
Okay, first, I have to tell you, coming to the question of yours about the time, okay, the time is more important, and also we can increase the time by asking the candidate, hey, sometimes the interview will not be expected as how we wanted, okay.
Mhm.
Sometimes people will give very lengthy answers. They also talk a lot of stuff. They give more information, okay. They will not be precise. For that reason, when you see your half of the, when you are in the middle of the first half an hour, okay, you can also tell the candidate, hey, I'm going to take a little bit more time of yours, okay. In that way you are asking the time. And the second thing, as a recruiter or the hiring manager, what you can do, always cover the whole stuff, Okay, if you can't able to cover that one, for example, the recruiter screen, okay, the candidate is saying, hey, I only have 1 hour. So in that case, what you can do, you always go back and write it in the ATS saying that, hey, could you please evaluate on this area? Okay, or if I evaluated that particular topic, for example, on the culture side, okay, when it comes to communication, okay, or transparency, and if I'm not very clear about that one, rather than getting into a conclusion, he said something I didn't understand it. Okay, you can always go and write it in the ATS saying that hiring manager, important note, please go and re-evaluate on this particular topic.
Yeah.
Okay, so in this way you can. And going back to your another question of asking, like, if I miss it, okay, this is what I'm trying to tell in the recruiter screen. There are some critical areas where we need to focus. Okay, we cannot have a very what do you say, very formal way of kind of interview. Rather, the interview I would suggest needs to be really a kind of a friendly connect, I would say that one, because we all are moving from the way of the hiring process, the old school way of doing it. Rather, if I'm being very successful in the hiring process, okay, what is for me more important is give a comfort to the candidate first and just debrief what is going to happen in this meeting, okay, and how I'm going to take it and how he is going to give the information. Just structured it beginning of the interview so that the interview will
You're
not.
telling them up front, hey, we're going to cover these areas before you even start going into the nitty gritty of the interview. You're telling them up front what we're doing.
Basically, I will tell you how I do the hiring interviews. So as soon as I start the interview, I first have a friendly connect with him. Okay. From his CV, something will be interesting. I start asking, or like, how was the weekend, or something like that. And then I will tell him, hey, this is not going to be the old school way of interview. It's going to be a connect to understand both of them where we are. Okay, and
Right.
see like both fit together. Okay, and then say in terms of skills and culture and everything. So if you start with these kind of conversation, it will go really really well.
I think it
Okay.
kind of takes away the sting of an
Yes.
interview a little bit, like the intensity of, everyone sits and goes, "Oh my God, they're evaluating me." One of the things I try to do my side is, mine's a little bit easier. I can always say to them like I'm an external recruiter. There's some things I don't know. There's some things I do know. I'm here to give you like the full overview, right? That kind of helps people breathe a little bit when they're kind of saying, "Look, we're just going to have a chat, and it's going to work or it won't work. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, we move on."
It will work really well because
Yeah,
honestly, most of the time when we get into the interview, okay, we're always nervous, okay, we doesn't know what he or she is going to ask. So just give that comfort zone to the candidates, okay?
yeah, I like that.
Whether it's going to be a successful or not, we are not going to be kind of putting a candidate in a situation, okay, and shooting the question. So what I do basically is I'm going to brief them. Hey, this is going to be the recruiter screen. At the end of the session, I'm going to tell you how the hiring process goes. What we are going to do, we are going to discuss about these topics. If you want, please note it, and then I will ask the candidates to know these are the topics, so he or she can prepare himself. Okay, and then he will also have that comfort zone saying that, hey, Victor seems to be a really cool guy. Let's get into the discussion. So I create this environment during the interview. This is very very important for me. In this way, I can evaluate candidates very well, and I can also say there are also some kind of the candidates um, will give a lot of long answers. In that way, I need to stop and say, hey, this is particularly fine, this is fine, and if I need more information, we will jump into the topic later. So stop the candidates at any point of time, and then if the candidate says like, no, I want to give some more information, if there is a time, then you can ask the candidates.
Do you get your hiring managers or stakeholders or whoever's in the panel to kind of prepare the conversation in the same way at the beginning of their interviews?
I already been part of. So there are two ways. One is like the recruiter screen and the hiring manager
Yeah,
interview. Sometimes due to the time constraint, when the hiring process is lengthier, okay, for example, if someone has to do a technical group interview, kind of an assignment or something like that, so what I will suggest the hiring manager is going back, hey, to to take care of the candidate experience, okay, let's put together the recruiter screen and the hiring manager. Okay, then in that case, I will take half an hour and then 45 minutes to the hiring manager. Okay, in this stage, what happens, I always go ahead and I will explain, okay, how the interview is going to be. So in that way, I'm also teaching the hiring manager the style of mine, okay, and also how this can add value and then how this goes really healthy. Okay, so sometimes the conversation will not go healthy because the candidate feel like, okay, the hiring manager is shooting the question. Rather,
Yeah.
you tell the hiring manager, I have this structure. I have seen couple of times there are some hiring managers. Okay, they have followed the way, and they also I have seen like I give the time for them, the hiring manager, to speak in the beginning to the candidates, and then they will list down the way how I did it.
Yeah, because what I'm thinking is that your style is your style. Everyone has their way, but it
Mm-hmm.
kind of does leave you open. Just listening, it leaves you open to kind of like either the candidate feels really secure with you, and it's great because obviously it's a I feel like that's going to be quite an inclusive process to someone, but it might be a bit of a sharp, especially if your hiring managers don't do it the same way. It might be a sharp reality or difference in reality of how you do it versus how they do it, and it's like dealing with two entirely different groups of people in the same company. If that makes sense.
Yeah, good question. This is why we need to um, schedule a lot of training sessions to the hiring manager. Okay,
Yeah.
so that comes my next part of my roles and responsibility. It is not that always saying that, okay, the hiring manager or the technical group panels, they are not doing the interview properly, okay, because they are not born for that one, okay. So we as a recruiters, we have chosen this profession, and then we need to add value. How we add value to this profession of the as a recruiter, as a talent acquisition person, we always need to think and analyze and what can be the best that we can bring it to the hiring process.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that way, recently also I was thinking about the one thing, as I was telling you, the first briefing, okay, with the hiring manager and the recruiter. This is was existing until now. Okay, what I'm doing, but what I was thinking was the one which I shared it to you, like bringing the technical group interview panel. So because recently I had some challenges. Okay, during these challenges, I was thinking what will go better. Okay, whether me going and calling individually and discussing with them, rather to have a briefing session in the beginning and then understanding our responsibility and then go for the evaluation. If you go for a war, okay, or if you want
Mm.
to execute something in the beginning, it is very very important. You need to do a brainstorming and you need to understand everything. If this way, if we go and start doing the evaluation, I believe the hiring process will not take longer. Okay, even the interview panels, like the tech group people, the tech group interview panels, they will also have sufficient information, rather going and sitting there and thinking and asking what should I ask. No, we
I
should.
think I would say I really like that example where we're taking it away from just hiring manager and recruiter and talking about hiring panel and recruiter, and then all bringing ideas into it. From there, discerning what's the evaluation topics, coming out of that and going, okay, we're all on the same page. Because I've definitely been on it where the hiring panel are interviewing, evaluating something different, and the hiring panel could be the CEO. I've literally got right now where I feel there's a disconnect between CEO and CTO and what their definition of the person is, and I'm in the middle, like, I feel like we need to have a sit down, and then when you actually sit them down and talk about it, yeah, there's a disconnect between what they're both evaluating. Does one and one does, and it doesn't correlate. But doing it at the beginning, I think that's a really powerful way. Because I think I don't want to put words into your mouth, so let me try and phrase this. How how has it been getting buy-in from stakeholders around evaluation processes?
I will not tell directly it's going to be a bias. Evaluations are bias. Sometimes it can be. Okay, we are human being. I have to. I will give you some of the example. Sometimes when you start a conversation, the candidate is with what do you say, with a lot of energy, okay, and everything.
Yeah.
With that kind of energy, when you start asking questions, then he gave, out of five, he gave three answers absolutely what you wanted. Okay. And then the bias comes into the picture. Okay. You started talking so many things and then you skip two questions. Okay.
Mm.
And then it goes to the hiring manager, and then the hiring manager, you give a strongest and then you send it to the hiring manager, and then the hiring manager who is going to do a deep dive. For example, take it in the tech roles. Okay, you ask about like, okay, what are the technologies you use, blah blah blah, and then how is your stakeholder relationship, how is your people management skill and everything. But that is something that you already missed it, and then you are sending to the hiring manager, which you already accepted with the hiring manager and other interview panels that we are going to evaluate. And then the hiring
Mm.
manager sees that one, and then he said no to it. This is one example. Okay. The other example is I evaluated everything. Okay. And then I said yes. Okay. And then it goes to the hiring manager, and then the hiring manager, maybe he has not understood it properly, what he or she has said, or he skipped that one and he said no to it. When I say he has skipped that question, for example, when it comes to a people management skill, I ask the question, hey, as a people manager, what you do, okay, how is your relationship, or how you collaborate with your team members in a daily, weekly, how do you support, can you take me through? So when it comes to me, okay, I also do a deep dive evaluation there. I ask question, but sometimes when the hiring manager or the interview panel asks question and then they don't answer it, okay, they just give a small answer, like a one shot answers, and then they forgot to follow up, ask a follow-up questions, and then they say no to it. So when it comes to after the evaluation, I read the scorecards, and then I see why they say no to a strong candidate. So call for a debriefing along with the hiring manager and ask like, why no to this candidate? And then they will say, okay, this particular person does not have this particular skill. And then I go and then I ask him, hey, during my stage of interview, okay, this person has given me a lot of information on this one. Okay. And then they say like, no, he just gave me this one. And then I ask them like, did you ask for a follow-up question on this particular thing? And then they, for example, if they say like he has not given any scenarios, and then I ask them, did you ask for that one? So in this way, every time you give a feedback, you evaluate, you analyze what is happening, instead of just rejecting a candidate. Okay, you always go for a debrief, understand, just don't go blindly. And if you add value by doing a lot of debriefing, you will reduce the bias situation.
How does that get buy-in from your stakeholders? For example, put it out to you, right? You've got engineering. Let's say you're hiring for an engineer, right?
Mhm.
You've got stakeholders who have interviewed a lot throughout their careers with you, with other companies. It's always worked, right? We've always done it like this. It's always worked. And there you are coming in saying, okay, we need a debrief. Every candidate needs a debrief. It's no longer good enough to put it on the system. I need to see the debrief. Let's talk about it. Let's challenge it. Fair enough. For management roles, they might say, yeah, actually, it's a good idea. But for like juniors, mids, seniors, and then all of a sudden, they're spending so many time in the hiring process and doing debriefs and not as much time on their work. Work suffers. They get more stressed out with that. And then the cycle begins. And this is what I see all the time is the cycle of, we'll just go back to what we do. So this is more of someone's sitting here thinking, I want to try this. But how do you get buy-in from your senior stake or from any stakeholder in the hiring process when their
Mhm.
job isn't only recruitment and
The
you're
only
asking them to
job
do
is,
all these tasks? Their job isn't only recruitment. You're asking them to do all these tasks, all these
Mhm.
debriefs. How are we going to keep them motivated to keep doing it when it's benefiting the talent team to find people quicker, but it might not necessarily be benefiting the engineer who's evaluating someone's code, for example?
Okay. The most important thing is like the feedback, or like having a debriefing, okay, which
Yeah,
is very, very important. And we need to give a real life situation to them when such things are happening, okay.
right.
Uh, See, again, I told you like the hiring managers or the stakeholders, the interview panels. yeah, they are not trained for it. Okay, so this is a very, very more important thing. Every interviews, every role when I'm doing it, okay, sometimes I might hesitate to go and tell that, hey, but you need to be open enough to give the feedback. If you don't give the feedback to your stakeholders to for them to improve and learn, okay, and you are the blocker, or I would say like you are the one who is kind of not helping them or making them to grow their interview skills. Okay, every leaders, okay, when you become a senior and your next level is an expert and then you go for a team lead, okay, it is also important that they need to um, learn how to interview and improve their interview skills, which is very, very important. Which means every time when there's something is going, okay, you need to give a feedback and also train them. Apart from that, it is also important, at least in a year, every quarter, you need to do a dipstick, okay, how your interview panels are doing the interviews. Okay, you need to collectively from all the positions, whatever. For example, if I did last 6 months, okay, interviews, and then I see that a lot of people is lacking in the way of asking questions. There are sometimes people, they don't ask questions in a layman languages, okay, that will make the candidate complicated. He or she might have the experience, but they will not understand what he or she is asking. Okay, every
Yeah.
company has a different terminologies. Okay, they ask questions, so it is also very, very important that we need to train them. Okay, so in that way you can motivate your stakeholders.
I like the fact that you're linking valuation process to training as well. Just that final thought there, just because I think it's so important that you're right, that we do evaluate, that we do train the interviewers. But I feel sometimes it's very difficult to say, okay, what should we train them on? Let's just do interview training. But if you've got a set of criteria that you're constantly evaluating and you see that Eden has consistently missed off asking questions around the culture, well, there could be a very direct way to actually support me by giving me training on asking interview culture questions. So on and so forth. And because I imagine the role will change, but some of the core underlying evaluation points won't, especially when you're looking at permanent hires into your business. The soft skills, they might change slightly, but once you've got like a bank of these evaluation points and evaluation questions, you'd probably then a lot easier to kind of upskill and train people quicker. I think that could be a really useful way for, evaluating how your interviewers are doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I will also give you one more example here. Okay, um, especially when you're doing the cultural interview. Okay, this is my opinion. Okay, every company has a different culture, every organization has a different culture, but most of the time it is going to be the same. Okay, here and there there's a slight different, and every company has a culture and then it has a values which is attached with the values. So when you are doing a cultural group interview, it is more important that you understand it.
Mhm.
Okay, you also need to ask questions, a lot of questions when it comes to a cultural interview. And no one is bad. Okay, for example, there was a situation when I was asking a candidate, have you ever got feedback? Yes, I got feedback. Okay, what was the feedback? And then he said, in the beginning, I moved from a different country. He moved to Germany, and then he said he was shooting follow-up emails because he got annoyed because the kind of communication what he was using was a little bit aggressive. He told me this situation, and then immediately I started asking a follow-up question to him. Okay, so now tell me, like, after you received the feedback, what was the action plan? Some people, when they hear these kind of answers, they immediately say, oh, okay, so he was like that, so they come to an
Yeah,
perception saying that maybe he
conclusions
might,
already made.
yeah, he might be a kind of aggressive person. Okay, and then they will stop asking questions. Okay, this is a kind of um, culture not culture. This is some kind of bias things that also happen during the interviews. Okay, so rather than you understand the situation, ask more follow-up questions and move further. That will makes the candidate. So everywhere you see a candidate experience, right? Candidate experience is important. So when that kind of questions come up, like, okay, how you talk and then how you acknowledge, it's very, very important.
I also, sorry,
Go.
on that one point, sorry, Victor, I also feel, and taking talent acquisition teams and where we've come from, where we are today, and things like that, I also feel like sometimes we've fallen into a trap of just rushing through calls. And the moment you hear something you don't like, get out of jail card, okay, cool, done, move on to the next person because we've got to back. Not as much recently, depending on what company you're in. But I do feel like having that time and the space between calls and what you rightfully said there, if you feel like you need more time, ask for it. I feel like that should help us ensure that we're covering off what we need to from the calls. We're not feeling rushed. We're not just looking for reasons not to get that person in the process. We're advocating for people. We want to give them the chance to say, look, hey, why are you perfect for this role? Tell me that. Give me that. Sorry, just to chime in there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The another thing is, if you think when it going to be when the evaluation, when you have a debriefing, okay, when they say like give justification, that if there is no proper justification, okay, if he or she, if the interview panel is saying, oh, this person in a very generic answer, okay, in general, we don't expect whether the interview panels or the candidate to give a generic answer. Okay, generic answer always makes the interview panels, okay, what she or he is trying to give the answer. Okay, does he have a situation, what happened? So try to avoid generic answer. It's or like a kind of in the interviews. Okay, rather when you do the evaluation analysis, okay, ask for the interview panels why you said no. When if you are very not clear about, if they are not justifying with a clear information saying that this is the, if they are not confident enough, okay, in the interview panel saying, I'm 100% sure this person is not having the skills, blah blah blah, but please justify how you interviewed. If you don't get this confident answers from them, please try to reschedule the interview. For in my career, I have done this several times. Okay, I try to put it with the next another interview panels. Okay, and then I will see how the interview panels are going to give the feedback. In the second time also, if the interview panel says like completely no, okay, then I will take the feedback, go to the candidate and give the feedback to them. Okay, the second time, if the interview panel says that they are really good in this particular areas, then I will go forward with the candidates.
I think that kind of sums up what I just said there as well. In TA, our role is to give everyone the chance and to say, give us all the reasons and the ammunition to advocate for you. And if somebody isn't, they're not always necessarily in the right headspace for it. Whatever happens, personal matters come into play, anxiety comes into play, whatever. But giving someone that another opportunity to say, look, you've got it. Let's go for it. I literally had it. It was last month. First interview, the candidate was stellar. The hiring manager was like, "Oh my god, this guy's amazing." Second interview, technical round, flopped. It just did not connect, and the candidate came out to me and said, "Awful." Like I recognised it, and he's not a native English speaker, so his thing was like, as soon as I got head fog, I could not get out of it. So we're like, well, we had one really good interview, one really bad interview, and the hiring manager was like, let's just try again. Take someone completely impartial, try again. Unfortunately, it happened a second time. So look, then you got to say, okay, it's just not right for us. But then you build the person back up. Say, look, one bad decision or one company's decision about you doesn't make it fact, right? So you just still you kind of help and coach them into the areas that can work. But I've seen it, and I think that's the right way. If it's not a definitive hell yeah, but you still think there's something there, what's half hour to an hour? Just it could be the best hire of your company. You never know. Victor, I really appreciate you spending some time and going through this. I really like the evaluation process element. I think defining it at the very beginning is something a lot of teams I think do miss, especially from what I see as the external recruiters. I feel like we're kind of evaluating as we go. But if someone wants to pick this up with you a little bit further, get to know a little bit more about you and the team and whatnot, where's the best place that people can find you?
LinkedIn.
Good answer.
LinkedIn is the best place, and I feel like I'm always happy to connect with people in the LinkedIn. Okay, or they can also write me to my email ID. Yeah, victoremmanuel76@gmail.com. I always can answer them like my expertise areas, what I'm good in.
Perfect. Well, Victor, I really appreciate it. So thank you so much for spending the time, and I'm glad we got it recorded eventually. And then, yeah, looking forward to hearing the response. But enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
I wish you to.
Bye.
Thanks for your time, Then, yeah.